Hey, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. So today we are talking all about brushes. I've gotten this question so many times on what are my favorite brushes, and so today we're going to do a deep dive into each individual one and tell you why they're my favorite. But first, let me put out a little disclaimer. You do not have to pick up these brushes. As long as you understand brushes, how to use them, and what shapes and sizes are good for what finishes, you can get any brush that you want. These are just the brushes that I personally prefer and that I grab to kind of give you a good starter if you want to go out and grab your own. The key things to remember with brushes is the length of the hair and the density of the brush and also the size. If you look at this brush right here, this is one of my favorite blush brushes, but I want to use it as an example. The length of the hair, you can see that they're a little bit longer than a normal blush brush. And so the rule when it comes to the length of the hair is the longer the hair, the more soft your finished result is going to be. So if you don't want anything that is super pigmented in that area on your face, or if you want your application just to be really soft and naturally build as you go, you want to choose a brush that has longer hairs. When it comes to the density of the brush is how many bristles are packed into the brush. The more bristles that are packed into your makeup brushes, the denser it's going to be. So for example, with this brush, you can see there are a ton of hairs in this brush. And because of that, it's so tightly compacted that it's really dense. What this is going to do is pack on pigment and pack on your products. So if you want to have more of a fuller coverage, whether that's your foundation, your eyeshadows, your powders, whatever, you want to choose a really dense brush. The denser the brush, the more coverage you're going to get, as well as the more pigment you're going to get with your application. So even if you look at this brush, it's kind of similar in shape to this one, but you notice that the hairs are longer on this particular one. And if you look at the density, this one is very dense versus this one has a little bit more movement to it. Even though these are similar in shape, because this one has a little bit of longer hairs and not as dense as this one, you're going to get a better flow of application and it's not going to be as full coverage of product compared to this one. And then the last thing to look out for with brushes is the shape of them. So for instance, the more tapered the brush is, the more precision that you're able to get, because you're going to be able to really use that point of the brush right in certain areas of the face, and it's just going to allow you to have way more precision. You can see how this one is more rounded. When it's like this and it's not as tapered, you're going to get way more of a blown out look. So for instance, if you just want to apply your bronzer and you just want it to be a nice sweep of warmth, you're not going to choose something super tapered. You're going to choose something that is a little bit rounder and flared out. Okay, now let's get into my favorite brushes. First thing I do in my makeup application is color correct. I like to choose a denser brush because I want way more pigmentation of my color corrector to really counteract that hyperpigmentation. But I also want there to be a little bit of a longer hair on it, so that way there's a little bit more movement. I love this brush. This is the Morphe E8. I can easily pack on that color corrector. I can get the pigmentation that I want on it, but I can also have some flexibility with the application because the hairs are a little bit longer. This is also synthetic fibers. Back then, synthetic fibers used to be like a huge difference between natural and synthetic. Not really anymore. I feel like the industry has really became more vegan and more cruelty-free focused, and so a lot of makeup brushes that you see nowadays are synthetic fibers, but they perform very high quality and a lot of times even better than natural hairs. When it's time to use a contour, I use two different brushes, and that's really because of precision in certain areas and also how much pigmentation is placed on that section of my face. So for instance, for my cheeks, for under my jaw, my nose, I like to use a standard foundation brush. Because it's flat, I can lay it flat up against my face and get a really nice graze of pigmentation and graze of product. And I also like to use the side of the foundation brush because it's flat and it's somewhat thin, and I like to use that for my nose. And you can get a foundation brush anywhere, guys. This one is just from Target. This is a Sonia Kashuk brush. For my forehead area, I want that pigmentation and that contour to be a little bit more blown out, a little bit more diffused, so I use the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin brush. Absolutely love it. It has an angle to it, and so it's really gonna mold to my face shape really nicely. That is one of my favorite things about angle brushes, is that it molds to the curvatures of your face. So in this video, you're gonna see a lot more angle brushes. For my lip contour, I use something way smaller. It's the Morphe M710. It is super tiny. It does have a good amount of mobility to it, because even though it's a small brush, the hairs are a little bit longer on here, and I can really use that angle to nicely graze over my lips and get a really nice and precise lip contour. For my highlight, I love to use the Sephora number 47. I have been using this brush forever and I absolutely love it. Again, it's angled, so it's gonna really be placed really nicely on the curvatures of my face. I also love that it has longer hairs in the back, shorter in the front, so I actually get precision. If I was to use right where the brush is starting to go longer, there's a lot more density on that particular part of the brush, and so knowing that, I can put it right up against my nose contour. If I want to add more coverage to an area, I'll focus the product more on the lower side. Because it does have those longer bristles, it's going to be able to help with that blend. A lot of times I will use a lighter concealer on the inner corner of my eye, and so I need a brush to really focus on that, so that way all that extra concealer that's lighter isn't going to be dispersed all over my under eye. It's really going to be focused in that area where I placed it. And this is the BK Beauty X Angie Hot and Flashy. This is the A506, and it's pretty similar in shape to the Sephora number 47. It's just smaller. So it's the same type of benefits with the 47 brush from Sephora as it is with this one. It's just smaller and more compact for precision purposes. See, that's why size matters. I told you that you're gonna see a lot of angle brushes. I wasn't lying, okay? This is the Real Techniques number 202. 9 times out of 10, I'm using this brush for my foundation. Same benefits, it's synthetic, so it's really gonna apply my cream products very nicely. I kind of got a big head, okay? And I don't want to spend a ton of time using a super small brush for my foundation and trying to blend it and deal with patchiness. It takes up a good amount of surface space, so I can really get that foundation on and my underpaint really blended well, and it doesn't take as long as if I was to use like a really smaller brush. For cream blush, I typically always reach for this one. It's the BK Beauty 108. I love this brush because it has a tapered point, and the way I like to apply my blush kind of goes up into the outer corner of my eye. And so that's why I like this tapered part of the brush, because I can really focus it on there and still at the same time have the product kind of blown out on my cheek as well. Also, it's a little bit smaller in size, and so I'm really able to concentrate that blush exactly where I want it and make sure that it doesn't go crazy. For bronzer, I prefer a tapered tip one. This is the Sigma Tapered Face E25. I use this brush in a couple different ways. I like to use the side of it because we're getting more surface area of the brush. I can get a nice diffuse look, and then when I really want to pop it in the hollows of my cheeks, I will use that tapered tip to really get that precision. For the contour area of my nose, if I want to use a powder, I normally just grab a blending brush for my eyes. This is just one from Sonia Kashuk. Again, the hairs are a little bit longer on this brush, and so it's going to give me a nice diffused nose contour and not have it be super harsh and strong and in your face. We still want our nose to be contoured and look that way, but we don't want it to be super harsh and just look like 2 straight lines down the side of your nose. Any eyeshadow blending brush will work as long as it has those longer hairs. Speaking of eyeshadow brushes, y'all, here's the thing. When it comes to eyeshadow brushes, you don't need a ton of them. I definitely have a lot just because I've been doing this for a long time. But the ones that I normally gravitate to, the first one would be this one here. It's the Morphe E61. I use this for the socket of my eyebrow bone to really add some depth here, create some dimension. A lot of times I'll use this brush with bronzer. This brush I use kind of as like a guideline for the placement of where I want my shadows to go and things like that. Longer hairs, not super dense, so it's gonna again give me a nice blown out look on my eye. I would have to say there are about 4 eyeshadow brushes, and if you have these 4 brushes, okay, you can do so many looks with them. So the first one would be a blending brush. This is the BK Beauty Angie Hot and Flashy collection, the A503. The reason why I like this brush, it's just a really nice blending brush. It's not too big. It's not too dense to where you can't get a nice blown out effect in the crease, but it also comes a little bit to a taper. So you are going to get a little bit of precision with this brush. So if you find a blending brush that has a similar shape, you're good to go. The second one I would say is an angled eyeshadow brush. I used to never use this brush, which is mad crazy because I use it all the time now. It is the BK Beauty 205, but any angled brush will work. It makes applying eyeshadow super easy. Let's say for instance you want a darker outer corner. All you have to do is just place that brush down, and because it's angled, it's going to naturally create that shape for you. You don't have to work too hard to create that shape. So you can really use this brush even kind of going into the crease to pack on the color, then just go right back into your blending brush and buff it all away. A good angled eyeshadow brush is so essential. And then I would say a standard eyeshadow brush. This one is just a Sonia Kashuk one. You can get it at Target. I love it because it's denser. It has a rounded tip, so it's really gonna mold to the crease of my eye, and it has a good size to it. And then you gotta have a smudger, one that fits right into the lower lash line. You can use it also for your inner corner highlight. You can use it to blow out the edges of your outer corner shade. You can use it to really add some depth and precision in the crease. A really good, just soft, simple smudger brush. The last 3 brushes I want to kind of say are like my finisher brushes. So the first one is the Morphe E49. I like to use this one because it's flatter on the side, so it's really just going to lay nicely on my under eye, and I use this to simply dust away my bake. The next one is for my highlight. It's the Morphe M501. I've been using this brush forever. Longer hair, so it's gonna give me again that diffuse look. When it comes to highlight, I don't want to pack it on super heavy. I want to build that, because if you put it on straight away, it can be a disaster. I'm just telling you. And then the last one is a super long haired brush, super fluffy. This is just one that I got off Amazon, but I like to use it as my finishing powder. Again, I just want a nice soft blown out application with my finishing powder to really blend everything together. I go all over my face with this brush and it gives the most beautiful application. Again, I just got this one from a set on Amazon. It is linked in my storefront. Those are some of my favorite brushes that I use for my makeup application. I definitely hope this video was helpful, informative for you, and you can kind of go out and play around and see if there's any tools that you're missing to kind of give yourself a better or more fun makeup application. I will say, if I had to tell you some of my favorite brush brands: Sonia Kashuk from Target, Sigma, BK Beauty, and Real Techniques. Morphe, honorable mention, okay? Because sometimes Morphe is not consistent. Sometimes it feels like you're putting your makeup on with a Brillo pad, and other times it's beautiful. If you're gonna get a Morphe brush, look for the ones that say E at the beginning of it. I noticed that those brushes are always consistent. Those will be some of my favorite brush brands that I would say go and try out if you're looking for any new brush tools. But other than that, thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you next week.